We have to talk about Meghan's Instagram. It started on January the 1st with a huge explosion, and it hasn't stopped.
I honestly genuinely had to go to her page to make sure it had originated there because I thought it was a parody.
4 years later, deciding to share what is a very private moment for a couple, the birth of a child, it kind of contradicts with her earlier assertions about privacy.
Look, I don't know why we can't see the children's faces. I think she's obviously got some sort of scheme there where I don't know, maybe she wants to monetise on one day.
In that Disneyland video, there's a front-on picture of them that she's put emojis on their faces, and that part I don't understand. That you don't need to include that. That's an option that's available to you, is to not put it in there at all. It just feels, I'm going to say, it feels a little bit obnoxious when you do put it up there and then you're hiding their faces.
I did an interview with Harry in Malawi just about sort of conservation and environmental issues, and he was really sort of pent up. He was really very sort of stressed, and he just would talk. You would ask him one question, a bit like with the BBC interview. You'd ask him one question, and he'd talk for like sort of 5 or 6 minutes. And I recognised that Harry in that BBC video.
That BBC interview was one of their biggest mistakes. Welcome to Royal Exclusive. This week, is Prince William the right man to step up to the plate in the fight to save the environment? Should Meghan be serving up her children on social media? And is the Duchess of Edinburgh the missing ingredient in the royal family recipe? I'm the Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, and with me to discuss that and much more is the Sun's royal photographer, Arthur Edwards, news.com.au's royal correspondent, Bronte, and ITV's royal editor, Chris Shipp. Now, Chris, we've travelled around the world. We've been to places like Singapore and Boston, and we've seen Prince William deliver speeches about the environment to do with his Earthshot Prize. Seeing him in Monaco speaking with world leaders on such a huge stage, what I got from that is or what I saw or what I heard was almost a passing of a baton from King Charles, who's delivered, as when he was Prince of Wales, so many speeches like this on the blue economy, on saving the oceans, passing it to his son. What did you take from William in Monaco?
I thought this one was different for a couple of reasons. Firstly, yes, we've heard him speak about Earthshot, but that is to his own competition, if you like, the one he set up 5 years ago, and we're now into the halfway stage of it. But this was a speech to world leaders, and it felt like the kind of thing that his father used to do when he was Prince of Wales. In fact, I went to a Blue Economy conference in Malta a few years ago and interviewed the then Prince Charles about his passion for the environment. And oceans is a big deal. We forget it's largely out of sight, as David Attenborough's new film reminds us. Because it's out of sight, we don't see the damage that we're doing, and yet what happens in the oceans affects all of us. And this felt like a new departure for Prince William. This was his moment as sort of stepping up as a global statesman, as his office likes to call him. But
we keep being told that, don't we, Chris? This is him becoming a global statesman. This is him on the world stage, and we've been waiting to see it. We are told that he's now a global statesman for the last year or so. But he's met Trump. Remember in Paris, he was there with Macron. We've got the state visit with Macron coming up. We are actually beginning to see him almost stepping into his father's, not into his father's shoes, but really stepping up into the Prince of Wales role that his father left behind.
Which is the role of the heir to the throne. I mean, it is, of course, a sort of the training job for the one that's coming down the track at some point in the future. But yes, you're right to say that we are seeing more and more of Prince William acting as the sort of global statesman. And we've got big events coming up. There's another Earthshot later this year in Brazil. And he now needs to show the difference it's making, because we're now at the sort of halfway stage. It's a 10-year project. We're 5 years in. And also being held in Brazil this year is the UN Climate Summit COP. Well, we don't know whether he's going or not, but it's not beyond the realms of imagination that he'll also be at that summit as well.
Bronte, Chris just mentioned there, we're halfway through his decade of Earthshot Prize, where he's taking it around the world. He appears to be ramping up his language, or he appears to be ramping up his occasions where he actually wants to take to the stage and talk about saving the environment. This is a new thing, talking about saving the oceans with David Attenborough. How do you think he's getting on?
I think he's getting on really well, and I was giving this some thought recently watching him. I think that we're seeing an increasing confidence in the role of Prince of Wales, because it is such a different role than the one he had before. He has had a little bit of a blueprint from his father, as you've mentioned, because he was speaking so passionately about the environment for so long. And seeing William now taking on this role even more, I think that over the last few years, it's been only a few years since the late Queen died, I do think that he's settling into the role now more than he had before, and we're seeing the results. Even things like last month, I think the latest YouGov poll had him at the top of the popularity list for members of the royal family. He is connecting with people in a way that's seeing them really respond to the work he's doing with the environment, with homelessness. And I think when he sees that being fed back in terms of how people are reacting to it, it gives him that increasing confidence to get up there and make these passionate speeches. And also, I was reminded a little bit in this recent one of a speech that Prince Charles made a few years back when he was still Prince Charles before he became the king, when he described the environment as we're in a last chance saloon. And I think it was a little bit of that when we heard William speaking, which was, this is the time, it is an urgent call to action, we're not doing enough, basically, is the subtext.
With the comparisons between son and father, the amount of times we've sat there, Arthur as well, watching the King deliver speeches, in Canada recently and in Germany and in France, he will use the local language as well. He will do a little bit, and William did that in this speech. He spoke at the opening of the speech in French and the end of the speech in French. It does seem a little bit of a little correlation there.
It was a sentence at the beginning and a sentence at the end, so I don't think they were pushing the sort of the French, bilingualism too far. Let's put it that way. I mean, I was really impressed when the King did it in German to the Bundestag in Berlin. He also did it in France and particularly in Italy, because he's not very good at Italian, or at least he was having to try really hard at it. But Prince William did a single sentence at the beginning and the end. I mean, 10 out of 10 for effort.
Prince William is doing it with that high-level statesman, meeting Macron, meeting all these people. Prince Charles went to all the rainforests. I think I've been to every rainforest in the world with him, 3 times to the Amazon rainforest. I saw him plead with these presidents to stop ripping up this precious resource. He was much more action man, I remember. And we'd go to a rainforest and he'd say, we never see any creatures here, we never see any animals here. He said, because behind every tree there's a policeman or a soldier protecting me, he said. It's hopeless, but he did it that way, and Williams did it his way. And probably Williams get more things done that way, but Charles cared so much. And I was at that Malta thing when he released the turtles.
Yes,
made a great
I was just about to
picture,
say that. It's beautiful.
And his speech, he said, plastic's now on the menu because the fish are digesting the plastic. I mean, he did. I think that resonated with me more than anything, that speech, and certainly releasing the trapped turtles, after they'd been and looked after. But so he was more physical. In the rainforest, sort of talking to the local people, and absolutely just cared so much. And he's been not doing it for 5 minutes, he's been doing it for 30, 40 years. And Williams, obviously, just carrying on that, but he's carrying on in a different way. They're going off to Brazil for 2 days and Monaco for a day and a half. And it's great, but I think the way our king did it was better. I think, you saw he was in action. I think Prince Charles has done a great job training him, and I hope William does the same with his son George. That's his toughest job ever.
The reason why he never sees any animals is because Arthur Edwards is there behind behind the hedges.
There's no animals because there's everywhere.
I did see him once in Borneo when he actually got to sort of exchange a banana with the orangutan. And actually, because that was in an area where they were trying to protect them.
That's
it was the one time I'd actually seen both in the same shot, Prince of Charles as he was, and
but they were nailed down, those orangutans, weren't they? They wasn't going anywhere, yeah.
It's a really good point you made there that Prince William, has been doing it for a short period of time, whereas Charles has been doing this for 30 or 40 years.
It's been his passion. He's been his passion. He's never ever stopped. He's I just can't remember a time when he wasn't talking about it. He was, as Bronte says, he was saying, we've got to do something about it. The world's coming, and I recently saw something on TV where Antarctica is melting, and the king penguins are dying. I think to myself, when are we going to wake up to this? This is happening now.
Well, this is what William's saying. I mean, are we worried at all about? We're always nervous about royals getting involved in politics. surely there's no danger here. This isn't party politics, is it? This is just, sensible ideas for saving the planet.
Depends where you define politics. Like, there was a time when Princess Diana was told that getting involved in landmines was political, and I don't think most people would agree with stopping people being blown up by landmines. How is that even possibly political? I think there is a consensus, apart from in the US White House at the moment, that global warming is here and the damage is being done. We've had a series on ITV this week, as Arthur was just saying, about the damage being done in Antarctica, completely on the other side of the world, and yet seems very remote, seems very far away from us. But what happens there will affect us all.
That's the best thing being on television lately, that as well, and they're keeping on with it as well. It's just brilliant. I mean, they're just showing the world that it's melting, and wake up.
Now, so William is obviously following in his father's footsteps. I think we'll agree. We can all settle and agree. We might disagree on things later in the show, so let's just be happy that we agree on this point right now.
I'm nervous.
But one person who seems to be emerging is the Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie. She joined William in Cornwall. I thought it was a lovely little job down there in Cornwall.
Isn't it? King, she joined in Cornwall.
She joined Prince William down there.
Was it William? Yeah.
So
First disagreement. Uh-oh.
The first disagreement.
I only did that for a laugh, man.
We're going to fall out. But no, Sophie was down in Cornwall, but she's with the King this week. She's at King's Award Enterprise at Windsor Castle, and she was with the King at the Royal Windsor Flower Show at the weekend. It's good to see her out and about, isn't it? I mean, but my theory on this is that we do have a shrinking number of families. We currently have the King and the Queen, and we have the Waleses. The Yorks are excommunicated. The Sussexes have disappeared. We don't actually have many working rules. We need Sophie and Edward. What are your thoughts about seeing her emerge this week?
We never think, you can never have that comparison more than when you think back to a few years ago and imagine Buckingham Palace balcony when the late Queen and Prince Philip were still around, and there was a very crowded balcony, and now it's as you say, there's really just the two households at front and centre. And also after the events of last year, when a couple of them were out of commission for a while, we really felt it. And that's when we saw the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh really step up. And I always feel when we see these pictures of Sophie out on engagements, or in this case the one with William, which was so much fun, the two of them were joking about having a drink together, and they just had this easy banter. You can tell they get along. And when you see her out and about and engaging with people, it's always just a really easy thing to watch her do it. She does it with such ease. She connects with people so well, and you wonder why we don't see more from her, because exactly as you say, there's a space for it. So I think that hopefully there'll be more of that in the future, especially as the Waleses move up through the ranks, down the line, whenever that is, because I think the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have a really good way of sort of, and not to sound ageist at all, but to bridge the gap, to broaden the demographic of appeal for the royals, because you've got William and Catherine that are in their 40s, and then you've got the others who are in their 70s, and you've got Sophie and Edward sort of in the middle there, and people really like them, and they work very hard.
Well, they're seasoned professionals as well.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a long... They were doing this way before the Sussexes arrived, to be honest. Way before Meghan arrived. Sophie and Edward were doing lots of great work. What do you think they bring?
Well, she's not afraid to tackle... And to finish that thought too, she's not afraid to tackle the tough issues. We've seen Sophie really get out there in some of the conversations that are a little bit more taboo, and she goes out into these war-torn countries and she's speaking about sexual violence and things that, they're extremely difficult topics to cover, but it's something she's never shied away from. And I think that's what she can really bring to the table. And again, I think people respond to it well when they see it. I want to see more of it.
Yeah, she's a lovely person too, and a joy to photograph. But for some reason, newspapers and TV don't publish it, don't run the stories. They don't go to India when she goes to India. They don't go to Mali and these places where she goes. It just seems that all the good work she does goes unreported.
I just wonder, partly that I think is the fault of the palace, because I don't think often they don't tell us in advance where she's going and only tell us when she's already got there, which doesn't help when you've got, to dispatch cameras halfway around the world. And I agree with you. She does do some fantastic work in the Middle East and Africa, helping children who, are suffering from potential blindness. In adulthood. So, yes, she could do a lot more, and I think she is a real asset. I think it's beholden on Buckingham Palace to put her out there more, if, of course, that's what she wants to do. But I completely agree with you. And when I started covering this job, we had so many households, you kind of lost count of them. You didn't really need the Wessexes as they were then, or the Edinburghs as they are now. But you kind of do now. It is feeling a little bit thin on the ground at the moment. So
and their kids as well. You know, I was thinking about this. We've got George and Charlotte and Louis. There is no doubt that they are going to be on the world stage when it's the time. They will be out there. People already are very engaged in watching them. But there are a lot of years, hopefully for them, before they need to be out there as working royals. They're quite young. George is still 11. So you look at then the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh's kids. We've got Lady Louise is 21 and James is 17. I don't believe either of them are taking the HRH title. I don't know what interest they have in becoming working royals, but we saw the late Queen bring in her cousins when she was Queen, and they helped out on engagements and stuff. And I think that we could see that possibly down the line when William becomes the king. He might call in them because, again, they're more of an appropriate age to be able to help out with royal duties.
Well, it's a sensible move, I mean, that you've raised there, bringing in Lady Louise. I think graduates this summer. I mean, she's one of the cleverest royals on the roster. I mean, she was a straight A student at school. She's gone to university and she's absolutely smashing it at university. She could be a massive asset. Do you think about the Edinburgh children maybe stepping up in the future?
I think it depends if they want to, and I think there has to be led by them, doesn't it? Because there's no point in the institution, the grey suits as Meghan called them, forcing them to do something they don't want to do. But if that's what they want to do, there is definitely space for them. And I think we've seen, particularly with Lady Louise, who was a very sort of shy teenager, we've seen her grow in confidence over the years as well. When we do see her at big public engagements, she does look a lot more confident now.
Well, Sophie's always been called the kind of secret weapon, hasn't she? And I could see potential.
But too secret.
So secret.
No one knows about her.
So secret we never see her in the papers. That's how secret she is. Yeah.
But Lady Louise could be, that person that steps up. I'm just wondering whether the kind of House of Edinburgh could replace the House of Sussex at some stage.
I mean, I don't think replace like for like. I think they could be an additional resource for Buckingham Palace. Yes, of course. I mean, Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh now, recently celebrated his 60th birthday, so they're not spring chickens either, but I take your point that they are that sort of generation in between William and Kate and the King and Queen. But yes, I think it really has to depend on whether the kids want to do it. And if they do, then I think that there's plenty of work for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just to pull back the curtain slightly on the rota that we do, you were talking there about Buckingham Palace maybe giving them more exposure. It's a case of we do rotas for William and Catherine, for the King and Queen. We're kind of invited along to cover those engagements.
Yeah. But sometimes with Princess Anne, for example, when she went back to the hospital in Bristol.
It's only occasional for Anne
and
the Edinburghs, isn't it? But we would love to do that. And I think viewers and readers would love to read
about it. I
it.
don't think Anne's bothered much about it anyway.
No, she doesn't care whether there are 20 cameras or no cameras.
She couldn't care less if you was there or not, I promise you, because if you're there, she's just like a father. She just ignores you. She just treats you like a telegraph pole, like a father. She just walks around you and carries on. I don't think she could care less if they were there. But I tell you what, I'd like to see do some work. Princess Eugenie. Mm-hmm. She's a fantastic kid, and she's doing so much for these children with these back problems, and she really cares. And I know I've got a granddaughter that had to have this operation, and Eugenie was so kind to her. She so helped her, and I think I'd like to see her do more, perhaps Beatrice as well, but they seem to be sidelined.
Matt, I remember you mentioned about the rota, and I remember a few years ago, it was just as we were coming out of COVID, of course, Harry and Meghan had already left, and they put on a rota, which was very unusual at the time, for the then Countess of Wessex at a pub in Surrey, somewhere not far from where they lived in Bagshot Park. And it was about her sort of encouraging the hospitality industry after that terrible time they had during COVID. I thought then that was the start of us seeing this happen much more regularly, but it hasn't. We're now in, 2025? And it is, as you point out, we don't often get rota jobs for the Duchess of Edinburgh. And the one in Cornwall that she did with William last week was, again, a rare exception.
Rare but welcome. Are we all agreeing on that as well?
Yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. What a show.
So it's a palace call-out. If they're watching, you want to you want the rotas.
We want more.
Okay.
One person, two people we cannot avoid, or it's now 4 people we cannot avoid.
Arthur's going to walk out.
We have to talk about Meghan's Instagram. it started on January the 1st with a huge explosion, and it hasn't stopped. It's been on fire all year. I was going through, at the end of last year, all the Sun front pages, and I put them all out on X, the royal front pages, to show what had happened throughout the royal year. And Meghan wasn't on it. I think she was on once with Harry when Harry was in Canada at like a pre-Invictus Games event. She wasn't there. She wasn't big news last year. She is big news now because of her Instagram.
Well, it's in her voice. She's now, since January 1, like it or hate it, she's now releasing information and videos and personal looks at her life and details of her businesses and launching things all through her own account. It's been a lot to take in. I think last week took a lot of people by surprise with the twerking video.
It was a lot to take in, wasn't it?
That's for sure. I honestly, genuinely had to go to her page to make sure it had originated there because I thought it was a parody. But no, it was real.
Why is she doing this? Why is she... That twerking video, for instance, and the Disneyland video, I mean, these have gone viral. Why is she doing this?
Well, I'm trying... to separate the two thoughts, I feel, we're discussing it in the context of royals and royal family. But now I suppose we need to discuss it in terms of entertainment. She is someone who is now working as an influencer. The direct marketing campaign is to your Instagram audience. In that respect, I think she's got something like 42 million views on this video, which I think all of us were among them. But everyone I've ever spoken to seems to have been among them. In that regard, yes, there are eyes on her page. There are people watching what she's doing. That directly relates, I would assume, to the sales that she's having and eyes that are on her Netflix show and, that are going to her website as ever. In that regard, again, look, personally, it was obviously very difficult to watch. It was quite cringeworthy. In that regard, I think, OK, you are generating headlines. That is the aim of people in this space. But then when you compare it to, how we would react, with the working royals putting out that kind of content, I think it's apples and oranges because, of course, looking at it through that filter, you think, what are you doing? This is not appropriate.
You're saying you don't think we're going to see William and Kate release a video of when she was in the Labour ward with Louis?
Wouldn't that be a day? But that's it. It's not. They're not the same. I think I'm looking at it and I'm judging it through that filter of the royal family because of course they still have their royal titles. This is the whole mess of it. Yeah. But I'm also saying she's an influencer and she's trying to get eyes on a page and it's working.
So Chris, if you could imagine sitting down in Montecito and you were there at a meeting with all Meghan and Harry's staff, they would look at, if you're saying 42 million views on this twerking video, they would look at that as a success. I mean, is she actually a shrewd operator?
It doesn't matter what people are saying about the video, and of course some people loved it, other people absolutely hated it, but people are talking about them. And you're right to say last year, perhaps it was quiet on many front pages of your newspaper because they were doing all the planning for this year. This year could, they did say after Harry's book, and, let's see if it ever happens, this was him closing the chapter on looking back all the time. We're now going to look forward on our business. Meghan's business, she doesn't care what people in the UK think about her twerking video in a Labour ward 4 years ago. She cares about eyeballs, relevance, whether that translates into her business empire as it's becoming as ever. Your paper ran a story the other day, of course, about now she's trademarked hospitality for her as ever brand. Does that mean Meghan's going to do hotels and restaurants and cafes or a Soho farmhouse somewhere in California? She sees potential in her brand, and Instagram is the vehicle to get her that business and that custom, and it's all about the United States. It's not about here.
And relevance is currency.
It's all about that. Yeah, she wants to be the second Gwyneth Paltrow, trying to sort of exploit it all. I mean, I couldn't care if I never saw another thing about Meghan, but our paper runs a lot of it, and she's hugely successful because she's getting the looks and the takes and probably people buying the jam and she's doing very well. And it seems Harry's doing nothing though, you don't see him doing anything. Just it's Meghan, and the twerking, my God, I thought that was awful. Absolutely awful. I really did. I thought she's...
What do you think about the Disneyland photos? She took the children to Disneyland, and there's a suggestion this is similar to when Diana took, but they weren't the pictures they took. They were taken by photographers who were tipped off that they were going to Thorpe Park or
Disney. I went to Disneyland with Diana and the kids. Yeah, we got great pictures that day. Yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah, but look, I don't know why we can't see the children's faces. I think she's obviously got some sort of scheme there where I don't know, maybe she wants to monetize on one day. I don't know, but those children I feel sorry for them, really. I mean, they've got cousins here they're never going to meet, never going to play with. There's palaces here and castles here that they could enjoy as well and spend summer holidays with their cousins. I feel really sorry for them kids cooped up in that place, and and will we ever see their faces? I don't know. Maybe one day she'll produce a calendar or something of her children's faces, and that'll be sort of another Meghan speciality.
I think they've got plenty of room there. I mean, I have a view when it comes to if you want to put your kids on social media, that's absolutely fine. You're taking that responsibility as a parent. You've also got every right to keep them private and not put them on. I just don't really like this kind of, here's a picture of my kid, I'm going to put a big emoji over the kid's face so you can't see, because that's me protecting their privacy. I'd rather sort of not see them at all if you want to protect them, rather than show them the corner of their ear in a photo.
That's always the part I find odd, because I completely agree with you, where it's a parent's prerogative, whichever way you want to go, social media. Every parent faces it at some point. We all have social media. But yes, I don't understand. In that Disneyland video, there's a front-on picture of them that she's put emojis on their faces, and that part I don't understand. That you don't need to include that. That's an option that's available to you, is to not put it in there at all. It just feels, I'm going to say, it feels a little bit obnoxious when you do put it up there and then you're hiding their faces. You don't need to put them on there. I think a lot of people would respect that decision if that's the one they took.
100%.
Well, we have seen their faces before. I mean, unfortunately, I was re-watching the Meghan and Harry 6-part documentary recently for other reasons, and you see their faces in there, and we have seen their faces lots and lots of times on lots of other pictures and lots of other videos. Why would you obscure the video now? That Arthur raised this idea of they could monetize their children in many ways, and this is completely different to what happens in the royal family. I mean, the Cambridges or the Waleses, would kind of often use their children on their birthdays, on certain events, or to kind of welcome them into the royal family, to kind of introduce them to Trooping the Colour. They will do kind of background videos of Platinum Jubilee. It's completely different. Why are they putting their children on Instagram?
If you ever read those press releases from Republic, the pressure group, they always say that when William and Kate put pictures of their children out for their birthdays, and these days they used to be taken by photographers like Arthur, but now they're taken by their own chosen private photographers. But the pressure group says this is them using their kids for propaganda to keep the monarchy alive. So again, they are in the line of succession, and therefore we I think expect to see them. But can you imagine when Arthur went, to photograph Princess Diana with the kids on that roller coaster, and the pictures you saw next day had a big sort of emoji over the front of their faces? It would just seem bizarre, wouldn't it?
William terrified going down the thing, onto the rail with his life.
Yeah, and then you put a big splodge over his face.
I can see why William does that, with keeps it private, because he hated us when he was a kid. I remember once in Cloisters, and no more pictures, Arthur, no more pictures. He couldn't cope with it. He hated it, and Harry hated it. And I remember one of Harry's policemen once told me, on his way to nursery, he said, I hate tographers. And William was determined that wasn't going to be for his children. And the way he does it, I think Kate's pictures are brilliant of the children. I think she shares them with us, and there's no pressure on them. They go to school without any intrusions. I mean, every start of every term we'd be outside the school or the nursery, and they hated it. And when I look back on it, I can see why now. Now.
Just to clarify, he likes you now, though, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, we're good friends now. Yeah, but I mean, then it was tough. Yeah, I mean, I feel for him now. I remember clearly when he came up to me that day. He said, "Please, no more pictures." And he was about 9 years of age then, and I just felt so sorry for him, and I understand why she's doing it, and Catherine's doing it, and she's turned into an excellent photographer, and I think those pictures that she shows to us, I don't think anyone else can do a better job than what she does. I mean, there's one picture with William and the 3 children on a swing. I mean, I thought that was just a superb picture, beautifully composed. Those are, she's got it cracked, and as long as she keeps sharing us with them, I think it does keep the pressure off the kids.
I suppose we should say at that point, Mother's Day photograph excluded from
anyone.
from that.
We all make mistakes, Nick.
Yes.
We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
And she apologised and she fronted up, and
Absolutely,
it's quite rare. We don't get many apologies from California when mistakes are made, or when they say things, offensive things. I think what she did then was, she fronted up and apologised and said she made a mistake. But I'll take your point. It wasn't only the 6-part documentary I was watching as well. I have dipped into Finding Freedom recently.
What's going on with you? Are you okay?
And
Have you re-listened to all the podcasts as well?
Haven't you got Netflix?
One thing that jumped out, and it's really relevant to Meghan's Instagram photographs and the use of her children, is this line where, in Owen Scobie's book, he said that when Archie was born, Meghan didn't want to serve up Archie on a platter.
Yeah.
For us, the media and the public. Is she going against that mantra now by putting her children out on Instagram and using them as much as she possibly can in promotion for As Ever and promotion for all her stuff? I mean, she's going against that line.
The front page of the As Ever website didn't have like Meghan and Lilibet running across the lawn, but it was taken from a certain angle and from a distance where you couldn't see their faces. So, look, yeah, and again, I suppose we can go back to the video in the Labour ward here. Again, you can make an argument for privacy, and I don't think women should be forced to stand there with their baby hours after, giving birth. And that clearly was a big issue for Meghan at the time. But equally, then 4 years later, deciding to share what is a very private moment for a couple, the birth of a child, it kind of contradicts with her earlier assertions about privacy.
Contradicts. You're being very polite. Yeah.
I think that's the sticking point with a lot of people. Again, I think that people do respect the decision that they've kept the kids out of the public eye, but it's then when they show up commercially, it is her decision. Of course, it's her decision, but it does just seem very jarring when you compare it to what a big deal, and rightly so, but what a big deal they made about it back then, and now because there is money involved. That's the part I think that is PR-wise, it just doesn't sit that well with people.
But America's everything's about money, isn't it? I mean, it's their way they work. I mean, the Oprah Winfrey and the book and everything. It's all about money for them. Here, it's not that way. I mean, Catherine doesn't charge us for her pictures. She shares them with us freely, and I think, but there it's all about making money.
Yeah, but I suppose Catherine's got the Duchy of Cornwall to fall back on, which is £23 million a year. But I mean, Harry and Meghan do have to make money, don't they, somehow? And if by using their fame and their notoriety, that's how they do it. That's clearly what
talking about making money. You touched on this earlier about the hotel and restaurant idea. So the Sussexes or Archwell or As Ever, I think it's As Ever, has registered or the desire to use its trademark on hotels and restaurants. Is this a good idea? Is this just part of the Duchess of Sussex's entrepreneurship? Are we going to expect her, a kind of Airbnb with Meghan being the hostess that we've seen on her documentary, turning up and putting flowers on your breakfast when you check in?
I like it. I like it for her in terms of it was laid out there that insides had said she wanted to be a billionaire and she was planning to be a billionaire. I didn't see how that could happen with what she had already put out. Maybe this is the way in, the hotel and restaurant.
I mean, the jam wasn't going to make her billions.
You're going to have to sell a lot of jam at a really high price.
It is sold out, though. People want it.
Yeah, but how many were on sale, Chris? That's the question. But when I saw this, I thought, again, if that's her ultimate goal, I suppose this is a good area of it to go into. But, of course, the problem with that is, as we discussed on this show, is with Meghan, her hosting skills, they're good, but we weren't exactly sort of, reinventing the wheel with what was being suggested. I think it was like flowers on pillows and with the pretzels in a different bag. Anyway, bath bombs.
Flowers on the fried egg.
Edible flowers on absolutely everything. Although I do see for her, she has connections with Soho House. She has her friend, I think he's one of the higher ups there. I can see that she could be interested in creating a space like that, and putting her Meghan brand on it. I cannot imagine it would be in the UK. I don't think you're going to attract the clientele you want to that. So she's probably, this is a big US push, but who knows? We'll watch and see.
Arthur, what's your thoughts? Could Meghan run a successful hotel chain?
Would you stay there?
I think she can make money. I think she's pretty good at it. I think she could probably do that. Yeah, I think, people probably want to be associated with someone as famous as her. And who knows? But she's certainly going it alone now and doing very well. But, you've got to sell a lot of jam to become a billionaire, you're right. And maybe this is the only way she's going to do it. And then will she run? Does she want to go for be president? Who knows? She's got a lot of ambition. She might go into politics who knows? We've got.
I think she ruled that.
Meghan.
She ruled that out on the podcast, right?
We've got Meghan for the rest of our life.
Yeah, we've got 30 or 40 more years of this, maybe even longer.
Meghan's going to be with us a long while.
Maybe it would be really interesting if on a royal tour somewhere we ended up staying in a Meghan-branded hotel.
Oh, God. I think the palace would kill him rather than do that.
The ultimate royal story. There you go.
You mentioned there about Meghan going it alone. It does really seem that all these things that she's doing with her Instagram page, as ever, her cookery show, as I like to call it, and potentially adding, hotels and restaurants. What's Harry doing?
Well, exactly. I don't know. He's probably just still feeding the chickens. I don't know what he does every day. I mean, he probably takes the kids to the park and stuff like that. But he doesn't seem to be having a real role now. And he sort of, and I keep thinking back to that video he made after when he lost the court case, and he looked so sad in that, so really down and not upbeat like he was normally. And I feel somehow he's having probably second thoughts. Maybe this is not such a great...
I mean, with the BBC interview, because I thought the same. I wondered,
sad.
that was only a month ago, you know?
I know.
It's been years, and as you say, for better or worse, Meghan's forging ahead with her path, but seeing Harry look exactly as you say,
all he
looking
wanted
so
to do was
defeated
reconcile with his father.
Yes, and it's so reflective, and it's still that looking back. And I think it appeared, and look, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but from that interview and the things he was saying, it just appears he seems quite stuck.
I just think that was.
And as you said, if he wants to reconcile his father, that video was exactly the thing not to do, because now, as far as the palace are concerned, they can't share anything private with him because they're worried it will just end up in the public realm.
Well, the thing is, Chris, if he'd have said that on that show, I said this on a recent night, if he'd have only said sorry on that. Sorry, Pop, I do want to, see you. I mean, I think that might have had a difference, but...
Do you know what? I remember doing an interview with Harry in, where were we? It was in Africa, towards the end of their Africa tour. We were in Malawi, actually, and he'd done a couple of media interviews through the course of that Africa tour. But as we know, at the end of it, we had the Tom Bradley interview with Meghan where it all kind of fell apart. But just before that happened, I did an interview with Harry in Malawi just about sort of conservation and environmental issues, and he was really, really sort of pent up. He was really very sort of stressed, and he just would talk. You would ask him one question, a bit like with the BBC interview. You'd ask him one question and he'd talk for like sort of 5 or 6 minutes. And I recognised that Harry in that BBC video, someone who was really kind of ill at ease with everything. And I just think that BBC interview, if reconciliation with his family is something that he wants to do, it was completely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, it was. But, in many ways, it was coming from his heart, I thought, really...
Why do you think he's like that, though?
His father's not well, is he? He's obviously concerned, I mean, he's his father, for God's sake. I think
and also the reason why you employ people like a head of communications or a sort of publicity advisor is to tell you, OK, when you do this interview, don't say this, this, this and this. And the trouble with royals, and this is Harry's not really alone here, you could probably say the same for the King and Prince William. If they don't want to take advice, they just don't take it, and they do what they want to do.
That's right,
and Harry perhaps should have had a bit of a conversation with his communications chief before he sat down.
I did feel that was a change in his attitude. I thought that was pretty much. I mean, I haven't seen anything in 5 years, and then suddenly he comes out with that, and I thought he looked so sad. So sad. Maybe because he'd just lost £1.5 million. Maybe that's what made him sad. But
that BBC interview was one of their biggest mistakes I think they've done since Meghan. To be quite frank, it came from a place of anger. And we talk about his team. I'm always fascinated by who's working around him, and I think they maybe gave him
how long they're there for.
Yeah, but I think they maybe gave him what he wanted, not what he needed with that interview. And he needed to sit down, relax, and see how it all washed out. It was a major,
it was all done in a big rush. We know that the BBC had to fly someone in from New York in order to do it. And the whole thing was such a rush. If they'd just taken a bit of a breath and maybe even did it 3 hours later, it would have been a lot better.
And so it was such an emotional issue for him to lose that court case. Of course, he's going to be at one of his lowest points, the worst possible time to be getting up on the world stage. You're exactly right.
People need to look after him a minute. He shouldn't have done that interview. It was damaging to everything. Right, we've just got time for our quick fire questions. Okay? So take a deep breath. I'll start this way. Chris, I'm coming to you first. Which royal home would make the best hotel?
I really like Dumfries House, actually, because not only because it's a real passion project for the King, it is a beautiful building. The grounds are amazing. You've got some amazing rare chickens in the garden where you could make some great eggs for breakfast. So I think that would be a great hotel. Perhaps not a with Meghan hotel if she's looking for some accommodation in the UK, but I like Dumfries House a lot.
Similar sort of reasons without the chickens, I think. But Balmoral, I was there last year, and it is the most beautiful property the landscape there is incredible. You could imagine it being an amazing boutique hotel. I'd like to wake up there.
My favourite fact about Balmoral was that when Victoria and Albert bought it, they demolished the old building, which used to sit in front on that piece of lawn in front of the castle, and built something new. They didn't like the building that was there.
There you go.
They've recently spruced it up, actually. They recently given it a whole big renovation and a clean, maybe in time for the Trump visit later this year, but they've just literally taken the scaffolding down recently.
Maybe they're turning it into a
Because
hotel.
actually we think that Trump might sort of pop into Balmoral when he's seeing one of his golf courses.
Yeah. I've stayed at Dumfries House. I've overnighted there. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah, it is pretty nice. Yeah, but I think Sandringham, because it's got the rooms. I mean, Balmoral, it's not got as many bedrooms, but Sandringham, you'd always get a room there. I think. Yeah.
So it's more exclusive at Balmoral. We're doing more of a big chain hotel with all the rooms anyway.
But it's a long way to go.
Well, it's, not as far as the Castle of May, perhaps.
Oh no, the Castle of May.
Maybe
no,
that's a bit too far away.
They've got loads of opportunities thinking about it.
There are a few.
Highgrove, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So the King will give David Beckham a knighthood. So which gongless public figure deserves a knighthood or a damehood?
I was looking up who has one and who doesn't have one. Incredibly, a lot of people do have them in sort of the arts. But I was amazed to learn that I think Colin Firth, who is an absolute treasure in the acting space, he has a CBE, I think, but he doesn't have a knighthood. I feel like No,
he paid King George the Fifth as well.
Yes. In the King's Speech.
I'm just saying, I was surprised to learn that he didn't have. I think he would be someone who would be in line, or Gary Oldman, someone like that.
Yeah. Chris?
I think someone like, if you're talking about Beckham, I think someone like Ant and Dec, who do a lot of work, of course, with the old Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust. I think they are already OBEs, but I quite like to see a Sir Ant and a Sir Dec. It kind of ruins the ruins the stage
Sir Ant and
a little bit. Sir Ant and Dec, but that would be a good one for me. Or someone like Davina McCall, who's done a lot of work on charity because she's been affected by cancer in the last year, and someone like her is a big name without a gong.
I'd like to put Arthur's name forward if that's possible.
Hey.
You must have one already.
I've got one already. But listen, I don't know anyone like famous, I think, but I've just been to Normandy, covered a D-Day, and Nicholas Witchell was there. Nicholas Witchell used to read the news for the BBC, and he was a great royal reporter. But he's tirelessly worked to build that place, and he got the money off the LIBOR fund, and I just think I'd like him to get something for that, because if you ever go there, it's incredible what's there. Every sort of name that people have died on those beaches is listed. And
we saw it last year, didn't we, for the 80th?
Oh, you were there, that's right.
The King was there last year.
And Nick's always there. He's just devoted his whole...
You're right to say he's always there. Someone told me recently that they went there and they were just buying a cup of tea in the canteen, and he was in the kitchen serving the tea. So he literally does put his money where his mouth is.
For that, because, he was a good royal reporter. He fell out with the King once, I remember. But they made up in Saudi Arabia. I was there when they made up as well. So,
good.
But I'd like Nick Witchell to get something.
That's a great shout. Very good shouts, everyone. Final question.
That we're not allowed to ask.
Here we go, Arthur. I think we're going to do Arthur.
Oh, you said Arthur.
Yeah, I said Arthur. I'm crawling. I'm a creep.
a bigger gong. A better gong than he's
Sir Arthur Edwards. With Trooping the Colour, Order of the Garter, Royal Ascot on the horizon, which royal event are you most looking forward to?
I like Royal Ascot for selfish reasons, because we get to attend, and it's not often. In fact, it's the one time in the year that I wear a top hat and tails, literally. We can have a lot of fun there. It's a good place to go, and it's, unlike Trooping the Colour, it's not at the weekend, so it doesn't involve working on a Saturday.
That's a good answer. In fact, exactly what I was going to say. Selfishly, I'm excited because we're going to go to Royal Ascot. But Trooping the Colour, I always like seeing it, the pageantry of it, and it's a wonderful event seeing them all step out. But it's on a Saturday, which is an extra day of work for the week, so that's a shame.
It's trooping for me. I love trooping. I didn't like it as a child when it was on TV. I thought it was really boring. But actually going there and sitting there and watching everything, it's brilliant. And I remember just after COVID, it might have been the Platinum Jubilee year, or it might have been 2021. I can't remember. They'd cancelled a couple of troopings, cancelled a lot of these big events, and when we heard all the drums and you saw all the soldiers and you saw all the military equipment, and someone there just turned to me and said, "God, we've missed this." And we really had. And for me, it was like trooping was almost like a post-COVID kind of like, oh, we've missed this pageantry. I still like
the
it.
Queen's last one when she stood there with was it the Duke of Kent, I think, because they were trooping his colour of his regiment that time, and we always remember that there's shots of her on the balcony in that really special year.
I like the trooping too, mainly because it's a great picture, the balcony at the end, and you get the fly past as well.
Yeah.
And I think that just, as a lot happens in such a short time, Ascot goes on for 5 days, and it just, and I hate horse racing anyway, so for me, it's all about what people are wearing.
Did you mention Order of the Garter? I just think that one's just bizarre. I mean, it's just it's basically people, walking down the hill in Windsor with big plumes coming out of their hair. It's a great thing to watch, but it's odd.
It's a busy ceremonial summer. We've got state visits from France coming in. We've got all these events coming up, and we will be
Trump at some point. We think
Trump at some point.
September, they say. Well, he
September
said
for the state visit, but perhaps coming a bit earlier to Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, Trump said on TV that he thought it was September.
I think September. We hope September because it's busy the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you could just hold off for a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah.
But we will be talking about it in the next couple of weeks' shows as well. Okay. Right, thanks, guys. I think we've covered a lot, and that was really good fun. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as we do read them, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We'll see you next week.